Well, we have some absolutely stunning news from inside of Trump's first criminal trial in Manhattan in the courtroom. So dramatic that the courtroom was cleared. Security yelling, everyone has to get out based on what I'm about to break down for you, which is absolutely insane. Before getting into that, I know we have to acknowledge it. I'm in this new studio. It's very exciting. The team has moved to DC and built this incredible place. Come on, pretty dang cool. But let's waste some time on that and get right into this story. I will let CNN break down the breaking news about the first witness that was called by Trump's defense team. So the prosecution has rested their case. Now it's time for the defense team to make theirs. And they've called Robert Costello, who is this Trump ally. And he was an advisor to Michael Cohen back when Michael Cohen was working with Trump, was still loyal to Trump, and now he's being brought by the defense to try to contradict Michael Cohen's story. And it got so heated because Costello is sort of doing the brazen Trumpian type things that Trump is excited to see from him that the judge ended up having to evacuate the courtroom, clear it. Here's CNN breaking it down.
The fact that this has escalated to this extent, this is part of why there was disagreement within the Trump world about whether they should call Bob Costello. The only reason he is being called is because the client insisted that he be called. There were people on Trump's team that thought he would be too much of a liability. And Paula, the fact that the judge has now reprimanded him for staring him down, this is really taking a turn.
So, that's what I was getting to that. He told Costello in a raised voice when he told the jury to leave, Mr. Costello, you're to remain seated. The jury leaves. Then Costello, after another sustained objection, Costello rolls his eyes, lets out an audible sigh, side glances the judge. The judge says, I want to discuss proper decorum in my courtroom. The judge says, you don't give me a side eye and you don't roll your eyes. The judge says, when there's a witness on the stand, if you don't like my ruling, you don't say geez, you don't say strike it. Costello holds a long glare at the judge. Judge Merchan says, are you staring me down? Then the judge says, clear the courtroom. There's yelling by security officers at the press to leave. The video is cut. Court security says nobody can come back in. Paula, you have a JD. You've been covering court cases for quite some time. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, this is unbelievable, and I know Bob Costello quite well. I've talked to him for about a decade. The fact that he would allow this to happen on the stand, it suggests in many ways that he is probably posturing for the defendant. Remember, it's the defendant that overrode his own defense attorneys. They said this is not a good idea. Do not put Costello on the stand. He overrode them because he loved Costello's performance in Congress last week, where he attacked not only Bob Costello, but also this case and the judge. So the fact that Costello would conduct himself in a trial like this, potentially jeopardize a case like this, I am actually pretty surprised, but it validates the concerns that have been expressed by members of Trump's defense team about why they did not want to call Costello, and also reminds us why when the defendant calls the shots and not the defense attorneys, you can have something like this happen.
So I will just clarify that Robert Costello sort of served as the individual who Michael Cohen would back channel through to get to, I think it was Costello to Giuliani to Trump, all the way getting information there and then back to Cohen. And this was right around the time that Cohen was deciding if he was going to flip on Trump, and he ended up obviously having to go to prison. And just to break this down further, Hugo Lowell broke down a full exchange. You don't say geez and you don't say strike it. This is Judge Merchan, because I'm the only one who can strike it. You don't roll your eyes. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? Are you staring me down right now? Clear the courtroom, please. Mice Touch responded to this reporting. Whoa, Trump's lawyers just really screwed up. And the CNN analyst there said that, number one, she's covered a lot of court cases and hasn't seen something like this sort of courtroom clearing because of an interaction with a witness such as Robert Costello in this moment, and also worded it as severely as this could jeopardize a case like this, is what Paula Reed said, which is obviously as severe as it gets. And this is yet another example of Trump calling someone he knows is loyal to him, an ally of his. And to his credit, Robert Costello did play a role in that time when Cohen was deciding what he was going to do and going from being loyal to Trump to no longer being loyal to Trump. And so he might have some information to bring, but we've seen him in House hearings too, as was mentioned in this CNN report, serve Trump with what he's saying. And so Trump likes the idea of him being called and then him being super belligerent and brazen and these sorts of clashes with the judges. Trump likes to see, even though that's not in Trump's interest legally, right? This is probably going to hurt his legal prospects, as Paula Reed pointed out. But it's very similar to Alina Habba, who did horribly in defending Trump or representing him in past cases. But Trump loves to see the way that she's very politicized and pushes, this is the worst witch hunt in American history type of ideas, even when behaving in court in this way as a lawyer isn't actually helping your client, because alienating the judge needlessly, as is being done here by calling this witness, isn't in service of Trump, even though he probably likes how chaotic it's getting. Now, before breaking down further, so that was a big bombshell. That's breaking news. That's why I'm jumping on now to do it. But I already talked with our legal expert, Aaron Parnas, about other things that took place, huge elements of Michael Cohen's testimony today before the prosecution wrapped up. So before getting to that and Aaron Parnas' legal analysis on that, please make sure you are subscribed to this YouTube channel. And if you want to go a step further, so just click the subscribe button, that's free, right? But if you want to go a step further, you can click the join button and get the members only content to support the work being done. With that being said, here's more on the trial today. And I want to bring in our legal expert, Aaron Parnas, now in studio for the first time. Fantastic. So we're going to go through a lot. Big, as I broke down in the intro, bombshell news, lots of people reporting on this Michael Cohen stealing from the Trump Organization story. Interestingly, as we were talking before, it seems to be getting a little bit overblown in its significance to the case. It's obviously significant as a story, but to the case. So walk through what was revealed today and then maybe it not being as exciting as Trumpers think it is.
Yeah, for sure. So today on the witness stand, Michael Cohen was cross-examined by Todd Blanche and was forced to admit that he stole about $30,000 from the Trump Organization. The cross-examination covered essentially a payment of $50,000 or rather $20,000 that Cohen made to have a poll come out in CNBC, I believe. And Cohen paid that $20,000 out of pocket. He then asked the Trump Organization to reimburse him $50,000, and Cohen pocketed that $30,000 and admitted to essentially stealing it from the Trump Organization because Cohen felt stiffed as far as the bonus that Trump was supposed to give him for the year prior. If you recall, earlier last week during direct examination, Cohen, or even cross-examination too, Cohen was really upset at Trump because of how cheap Trump was. And as part of Trump being cheap, he actually stiffed Cohen on his year-end bonus, the same year that the Stormy Daniels payment was made. So in response, Cohen kind of fought back a little bit and I guess stole the $30,000 and admitted to it on the witness stand for the first time. Now, he was never prosecuted. Todd Blanche asked if he was ever prosecuted for larceny. Cohen said no, and he wasn't. And Trump apparently in the courtroom shook his head kind of in disgust at Cohen. But ultimately, this isn't as big of a deal that a lot of these mainstream media folks are making it out to be because it really doesn't have much to do with the allegations in this case.
Yeah, and to be clear, it by itself is something that neither of us would oppose Michael Cohen being held accountable for, and does sound like a violation of at least his obligations, to be honest, to the organization he worked for at the time. But right now, we're not in a trial about his potential stealing. We're in a trial about Trump's potential crimes, and it does seem like this is just yet another example of Michael Cohen, when he worked for the Trump Organization, was doing a lot of low character, I'd say immoral things, but that's something we've known going in. He is just bolstering the actual payment, the falsification, business records, all of that, and it's not really about his character, am I right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Michael Cohen is a criminal. We've known that. He's pled guilty to multiple criminal offenses. He served several years in federal prison. Him stealing from the Trump Organization is noteworthy in that, yeah, he could be prosecuted for that if we're still within the statute of limitations. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if some kind of prosecution is brought, but we may actually be outside of the statute of limitations now because that was several years ago. But ultimately, this case is about whether or not Donald Trump made a false business record, or rather directed the falsification of a business record. And the crux of Cohen's testimony is corroborated by a number of these documents that the jury has already seen, these checks, these emails, even voice recordings between him and Trump, that Cohen's testimony in and of itself may seem kind of shot in a way, but it doesn't ultimately impact whether or not there's going to be an acquittal or a conviction as much because a lot of Cohen's testimony is supported by documentary evidence. And everyone knew that Cohen's credibility isn't great. I mean, he is a liar. He admitted to lying, and prosecutors got that out. So I expect the jury to really take a lot of this testimony with a grain of salt and look to the documents and the recordings and go from there.
Yeah, I covered a story of J.D. Vance being interviewed, funnily enough, by Donald Trump Jr., and he was saying, it's bad for the prosecution that two of their quote-unquote star witnesses are Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, and the example he used as to why they're bad is because he would never let them babysit his children. And I was thinking, okay, and if you feel that way about Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, how can you support the guy who had allegedly an affair with one of them and who actually directed the other one to do many of these actions that may be against the law, definitely immoral? So then it seemed that the jury, based on what we've discussed so far, wasn't super engaged in Todd Blanche's way of going about this cross-examination today. Dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, Todd Blanche has definitely hit some points over the past several days, but even today, and kind of the same on the first day of his cross-examination, jurors kind of got bored. They couldn't really follow where he was going with his questioning because he was a little all over the place. And when you're cross-examining a witness, a key kind of tactic that you want to do is make it clear for the jury that you're going from A to B to Z all the way to the end. While Todd Blanche kind of was skipping around, going from A to S to R to Q, I mean, it was all over the place. And it was very hard these are 12 lay individuals. These are not attorneys. These are not experts. They don't know what's happening in this case outside of what they've heard in a courtroom. While Todd Blanche has studied kind of the evidence for over a year now. So he needs to talk to them as though they are lay individuals and not as though that they are attorneys on his kind of legal team. And one other point, some of the biggest prosecutions and convictions in American history, whether it's the mob families or the El Chapo's drug trafficking convictions, prosecutors rely on corroborating witnesses who are often murderers, liars, thieves. I mean, some of the worst people you can imagine take plea deals and get on the witness stand, yet they help convict the boss. Yep. And that's kind of what you see here. I mean, Michael Cohen isn't your best witness. He's no prosecutor's favorite witness, but he will help convict his boss because he is corroborated by documents and by evidence.
Yeah, and it makes sense that if you're prosecuting someone like Donald Trump, the people that Trump will surround himself with and engage with aren't necessarily going to be the most credible people because they're engaged in the type of behavior that Trump now is being prosecuted for. Any other details? Actually, one question I want to ask is, what's the timeline looking like from here? Because I know Michael Cohen, his testimony is wrapping up. That should be finished. Then what comes next? Yeah,
so then the prosecutors are expected to rest their case, which means that defense attorneys will be able to put up their own witnesses. I think that they may put up an expert witness. I believe there's going to be conversations about that. Then Trump is going to have to decide whether or not he's going to testify and take the witness stand. Remember, he's said that he's wanted to, but now apparently he's saying that he's bound by the gag order, which is completely untrue. So we'll see if he actually is... will take the witness stand. I would surmise not. And then afterwards, you're going to have closing arguments right after Memorial Day on Tuesday, the 28th. Jurors are going to get the case that week, and then we could have a verdict as soon as next Friday.
Wow. Aaron, where can people find you?
Just on all my social platforms at Aaron Parnas.